What if I told you that Princess Diana made one final phone call to her sons just hours before her tragic death? What if I told you that the words exchanged in that brief conversation would haunt Prince William and Prince Harry for the rest of their lives, shaping their understanding of love, loss, and the price of royal duty? This isn't just another story about Diana's final day. This is the untold truth about a mother's last desperate attempt to connect with her children, and how 5 simple words from 2 young boys would echo through eternity. The conversation lasted only minutes, but its impact would change everything. If you want to keep Diana's memory alive and discover the hidden truths about the people's princess, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Let's begin. August 30th, 1997, Balmoral Castle, Scotland. Evening. The ancient stone walls of Balmoral Castle echoed with the sound of children's laughter as the summer evening settled over the Scottish Highlands. Prince William, 15 years old and sun-kissed from their recent holiday in Saint-Tropez with his mother, was chasing his 12-year-old brother Harry through the castle's endless corridors. To Harry, Balmoral was always simply paradise, a cross between Disney World and some sacred druid grove, as he would later write. That evening, the boys were living in the innocent bliss of childhood, unaware that their world was about to shatter. They had spent the day playing through the halls of the castle with their cousins, and Harry had even taken a turn playing the bagpipes of the Queen's piper. Their father, Prince Charles, watched from a distance, perhaps sensing something none of them could name, a heaviness in the air, a finality to these golden moments. The royal family was in their element here. Queen Elizabeth lived to be outdoors and got cross if she didn't breathe at least an hour of fresh air each day. For William and Harry, this was freedom, away from the suffocating protocol of palace life, away from the cameras, away from the constant reminders that their mother lived in a different world now. Earlier that month, they had posed for photos by the River Dee with their father and their beloved black Labrador, Widgeon, skipping stones and climbing rocks like any normal family. These images would become some of the last happy photographs of them together before everything changed. But as the evening shadows lengthened across the highland landscape, none of them knew that 700 miles away in Paris, their mother was preparing to make a phone call that would become their final conversation. Diana had something important to tell her boys, something that would reveal the true depth of a mother's love and the tragic weight of what was about to unfold. What Diana said in that call would redefine everything they thought they knew about their family, their future, and the woman who had shaped their hearts. The phone was about to ring, and with it, destiny would come calling. August 30th, 1997, the Ritz Hotel, Paris, 7:30 p.m. Diana and Dodi had arrived in Paris around 3 p.m. from Sardinia and were staying at the Ritz Paris owned by the Fade family. As twilight painted the city of light in golden hues, Diana stood by the window of her suite, looking out at the Place Vendôme. The weight of her recent decisions pressed heavily on her heart. She missed her boys with an ache that felt physical. Having not seen each other for nearly a month, Diana and her sons were looking forward to a reunion in London the following day. But there was something she needed to tell them first. Something that couldn't wait until tomorrow. According to Daily Mail reporter Richard Kay, Diana had called him that morning declaring she was just about ready to withdraw from public life. The constant scrutiny, the relentless paparazzi, the impossible balance between being a mother and being a global icon. It was all becoming too much. She had made a decision that would shock the world, but first, she needed to hear their voices. Her hands trembled slightly as she dialed the familiar number of Balmoral Castle. The phone rang once, twice, and then, connection. The sound of familiar chaos filled the line. Boys shouting in the background, dogs barking, the distant sound of bagpipes from somewhere in the castle. "Mummy!" Harry's voice burst through the receiver, bright and breathless with excitement. "We've been having the most amazing time. William taught me to skip stones properly, and I played the Queen's Piper's bagpipes." William grabbed the phone from his brother. At the time, Harry and I were running around, minding our own business, playing with our cousins and having a very good time, William would later recall. Diana's heart swelled with love and broke with longing simultaneously. How she wished she could be there with them, running through those ancient corridors, breathing that crisp Highland air. Instead, she was trapped in a golden cage of luxury hotels and public scrutiny. "I miss you both so much," she whispered into the phone, her voice carrying all the weight of a mother's love. "Tomorrow can't come soon enough." But then Harry asked the question that would change everything. "Mummy, are you going to marry Dodie?" The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but it stretched like an eternity. What Diana said next would reveal the true state of her heart and set in motion events that would alter the course of history. Her answer would be the last profound truth she would ever share with her children. August 30th, 1997, Balmoral Castle in Paris, 7:35 p.m. The question hung in the air like a struck bell. Harry, in his 12-year-old directness, had asked what the entire world was wondering. "Mummy, are you going to marry Dodie?" Diana's response was emphatic. "No," she said with such certainty that it surprised even her. The word carried the weight of absolute truth, a mother's honest revelation to her children about the real state of her heart. William, still holding the phone, felt something shift in that moment. This wasn't the casual no of someone avoiding a question. This was a declaration. Their mother's voice carried a tone they rarely heard, complete, unguarded honesty. "Why, Mummy?" William asked, his 15-year-old mind trying to understand the complexities of adult relationships. Diana closed her eyes, gathering her thoughts. How could she explain to her boys that despite the headlines, despite the photographs on yachts in the Mediterranean, despite the fairy tale narrative the press was weaving, her heart belonged elsewhere? How could she tell them that she was with Dodie not for love, but for comfort, companionship, and perhaps a little revenge against a system that had tried to break her? "Because," she said softly, "love is different from what you read in the newspapers. Real love is what I have for you too. Everything else is just complicated." Both boys were eager to get back to their games with their cousins, and they were in a desperate rush to say goodbye. But something in their mother's voice made them pause. There was a finality to her words that neither could quite understand. "We can't wait to see you tomorrow, Mummy," Harry said, his young voice filled with innocent excitement. "We have so much to tell you about Balmoral." "Tomorrow," Diana repeated, as if tasting the word. "Yes, tomorrow we'll have all the time in the world." But as she spoke those words, the shadow of prophecy seemed to fall across them. Outside her hotel window, photographers were already gathering, their long lenses glinting in the evening light like predators' eyes. The machine that had made her famous was also slowly destroying her, and somewhere deep in her heart she knew that tomorrow might not come as planned. What she said next would be her final gift to her children, words that would carry them through the darkest days of their lives and shape the men they would become. But first, she needed to tell them the one thing that mattered most. August 30th, 1997, the Ritz Hotel, Paris, 7:37 p.m. Diana could hear the restlessness in her sons' voices, the gentle impatience of children who wanted to return to their games. But she wasn't ready to let them go. Something deep in her mother's heart whispered that this moment was precious, that these words might be more important than she could possibly know. "Boys," she said, her voice taking on that special tone she reserved for their most important conversations. "Before you go, I need you to know something. Harry and I were in a desperate rush to say, 'Goodbye, see you later. Can I go off?'" William would later remember. But something in their mother's voice made them pause, despite their eagerness to return to their cousins. "What, Mummy?" Harry asked, his 12-year-old impatience barely contained. Diana took a deep breath, looking out at the Paris evening, at the city where she had once been so happy during her courtship with Charles. where she had later experienced some of her deepest heartbreaks, and where, unknown to her, her story would end in just a few hours. "I want you to know that you two are my everything," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Whatever happens in life, whatever you read about me in the papers, whatever anyone tells you about royal duty or proper behavior, remember that you were loved. Completely, unconditionally, perfectly loved." The words carried a weight that seemed to transcend their simple meaning. It was as if Diana was pouring 20 years of motherhood into a single moment, condensing all her hopes, fears, and dreams for her children into one final declaration. "We know that, Mummy," William said, his teenage voice softening with genuine affection. "We love you too." "More than all the stars in Scotland," Harry added, using one of their private family expressions. Diana smiled through tears that her sons couldn't see. "More than all the stars in Scotland," she agreed. "And remember, when you become men, when you have families of your own, be different. Be the fathers I always dreamed you could be. Break the cycle." The call had lasted about 5 minutes when the boys began to fidget again. They could hear their cousins calling for them in the background, and the magnetic pull of childhood adventures was too strong to resist. "Mummy, can we go now?" Harry asked. "Peter and Zara are waiting, and we're going to—" "Of course, darling," Diana interrupted gently. "Go play. Have fun. I'll see you tomorrow." What came next would haunt both princes for the rest of their lives. In their eagerness to return to their games, they said the 5 words that would echo through eternity, words that seemed so casual in the moment but would carry the weight of infinite regret. August 30th, 1997. Balmoral Castle, 7:40 p.m. "Goodbye. See you later. Can I go off?" The words tumbled out of William's mouth in a rush of teenage impatience. He was already mentally back in the castle corridors, chasing his brother and cousins through the ancient halls of Balmoral. "Love you, Mummy. Bye," Harry called out quickly, the phone already being passed back to someone else in the room. And then, dial tone. Diana stood in her Paris hotel suite, the phone still pressed to her ear, listening to the silence that follows the end of all conversations. But this silence felt different. It felt final. She had wanted to say so much more. She had wanted to tell them about her fears, about the photographers who never left her alone, about the premonitions that had been haunting her for months. She had told her friend Roberto Dvorak that she always believed she was going to die young, saying, "I think they are going to kill me. I am going to finish in an accident, helicopter, plane, or car crash." But how do you tell your children that you're afraid? How do you burden them with your own dark intuitions? Instead, she had given them love, pure and simple. In his memoir, Spare, Harry would write, "Someone chimed in, 'Your mother's in Paris.'" Maybe it was Mummy herself who said that. When she phoned earlier that day for a chat, alas, the memory lies, with a million others, on the other side of a high mental wall. Those 5 words, "Goodbye, see you later, can I go off?" would replay in William's mind for decades. "If I'd known what was going to happen, I wouldn't have been so blasé about it. That phone call sticks in my mind quite heavily," he would later confess. Harry's regret would cut even deeper. "If I'd known that that was the last time I was going to speak to my mother, the things I would have said to her. Looking back at it now, it's incredibly hard. I have to deal with that for the rest of my life." At 7:40 p.m., Paris time, 6:40 p.m. in Scotland, the last conversation between Princess Diana and her sons had ended. In less than 6 hours, Princess Diana would be declared dead at around 4 a.m. in Paris. But the power of that final phone call, the love she had poured into those brief minutes, the truth she had shared about her heart, the blessing she had given them to be different, would sustain her sons through the unimaginable grief that was coming. Diana had given them everything she could in that moment, her truth, her love, and her final wishes for their future. What she couldn't know was that those gifts would prove to be the most precious inheritance she could have left behind. The phone call was over, but its impact would change everything. August 31st, 1997, Balmoral Castle, early morning. In the early hours of August 31st, Prince Harry awoke to his father, standing at the edge of the bed, looking down. His white dressing gown made him seem like a ghost in a play. The words Charles spoke next would shatter their childhood forever. "Darling boy, Mummy's been in a car crash." William, 15, and Harry, 12, learned of their mother's death from their father while at Balmoral Castle. In that moment of unimaginable loss, the memory of their final phone call became both their greatest comfort and their deepest regret. "I can't necessarily remember what I said, but all I do remember is regretting for the rest of my life how short the phone call was," Harry would later confess. Those 5 rushed words, "Goodbye, see you later, can I go off?" would haunt him forever. But in the years that followed, as both princes grew into men, they began to understand the true gift their mother had given them in that final conversation. She had told them the truth about her heart, that despite the headlines and speculation, her deepest love was reserved for them. She had emphatically said no when asked if she would marry Dodi, revealing that the fairy tale romance the world believed in was not her reality. More importantly, she had given them permission to break the cycle, to be different from the generations of royal fathers who had prioritized duty over love, protocol over emotion. That blessing would guide them as they became fathers themselves, choosing to be present, affectionate, and emotionally available in ways that revolutionized royal parenting. Years later, reflecting on their mother's love, William would say, "We felt, incredibly loved, Harry and I. And I'm very grateful that that love still feels there," Harry added. "It was that love that even if she was on the other side of a room, that you, as a son, you could feel it." Diana's final words to her sons, "You were loved, completely, unconditionally, perfectly loved," became the foundation upon which they built their own understanding of parenthood, marriage, and what it means to put family before duty. That morning, as the royal family attended church at Crathy Kirk, William would later say, "I was in Balmoral when I was told that my mother had died. Still in shock, I found sanctuary in the service at Crathy Kirk that very morning." The tragedy is that Diana never knew how prophetic her final conversation would be. She never knew that her simple declaration of unconditional love would carry her sons through decades of grief, public scrutiny, and personal struggles. She never knew that her dying wish for them to be different would reshape the monarchy itself. But perhaps that's the most beautiful part of this story. In that ordinary phone call lasting just 5 minutes, a mother's love transcended time, tragedy, and even death itself. Diana's final gift to William and Harry wasn't a grand gesture or profound wisdom. It was the simple, eternal truth that they were perfectly, completely, unconditionally loved. That love changed everything, and 26 years later, it still does. Princess Diana's legacy lives on through the love she gave her sons and the example she set for the world. Her final phone call reminds us that the most powerful words we can speak are often the simplest ones. You are loved. If this story touched your heart and helped you understand the real Diana, not the fairy tale princess, but the devoted mother who loved her children with every fiber of her being, please subscribe to keep her memory alive. Hit the notification bell so you never miss the untold stories that reveal the truth behind the headlines. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about the power of a mother's love. And remember Diana's final message to her sons. Break the cycle, choose love, and never let protocol override the human heart. The people's princess may be gone, but her love story continues through every act of compassion, every moment of authentic connection, and every time we choose to put love first. Thank you for keeping Diana's memory alive. Until next time.